series. Today we're going to be visiting with John Knott, the founder and CEO of CityCraft. John is a third-generation builder and developer and has more than 45 years of experience in urban regeneration. John, thanks for visiting us today.
Great to be with you, Crystal.
So that sounds like a good place to start because people may not know what urban regeneration is. How would you define it?
So urban regeneration is essentially looking at, we focus on the most difficult, stressed areas of cities where they have huge economic disparities and environmental problems, and work at how do you actually turn areas of those cities around in such a way that you heal the economic, social, and environmental fabric, but you also do it with the people who are there so that they become part of the new economic system and build wealth and maintain that wealth internally to that area of the city, as opposed to being pushed away and lots of new things being built by a lot of experts, and then have a whole bunch of new people move in, and their poverty and the issues of theirs just start to get worse and more complex because they get moved further out.
Certainly. So talk a little bit about, people probably are very familiar because it's all what has been done with traditional building and development. So what is different about CityCraft? What is this kind of like new concept look like? So
it's actually not a new concept. We come from a master building tradition, which harks back to the European tradition of building and design, where architects, engineers, and builders were all one. We built for a lifetime. We didn't build for 3 to 5 years. We owned our assets long term. We were taught, my grandfather started our tradition in 1908. He comes from a master building background. And so we essentially were taught that we were in the human habitat business. We weren't in the building business. And we were in the community building business, not the development business. We were responsible for the health of all those we served directly and the community we influenced beyond who we served. So if you were in an office building doing a renovation, you had a responsibility for the buildings on either side and the people in all the other floors. If you were doing a block of development, you were responsible for the larger community. So everything was always in this larger context. And I think what really, it wasn't that master building did everything right, but they did a lot more right than we do today. Like I always say, my grandfather used to know, he didn't know anything about stack effect, he knew nothing about passive solar or anything like that, but he actually knew how to put a skylight on top of a vent shaft, on top of a light well, dormers over individual doorways, that shutters had 3 functions, they just weren't screwed to a wall. They knew how to orient, they paid attention to solar orientation and prevailing winds, they knew what side of the house to put the porch on. They knew, we live in an 1873 old Victorian we restored in Charleston, and it's actually elevated, like almost all those houses in that tradition. And yet 3 blocks away, a development was done in the 1960s, built right at the grade level in a place called the Low Country that floods all the time. How we actually think this way, and my struggle all the time is if you understand you're in the human habitat business, and you know that human beings need clean air, clean water, healthy soils to produce healthy food, resilient construction that actually understands the climate it's in, and can harvest the natural resources for its benefits so you don't have to spend so much time operating the building, and the building's built for a long time and can be adaptive, why is this so hard? And it's because if you go back, we evolved that way. If you look at the way of look at places like Park Hill, look at places, the old historic buildings that have been, look what they built in Union Station, and that has gone through who knows how many different lifetimes and how many different uses, but because of the way it was built, it's adaptable, and it can handle all kinds of different live loads, dead loads, uses, functions, because it was built for life. Today, if you look at retail developments that were built in the 30s, go look at 23rd Street and where Spinelli's is, and look at those apartments and those retail spaces, and they've been there forever. Look at the retail space we built today. How long does it last, and how soon before it's all torn down? this is not economically sustainable. It's not economically durable, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But at least in our view, and so what's happened this isn't just about development. Our entire society has moved from long-term thinking to short-term thinking. We've moved from investment to extraction. We don't understand a building as a system. We think it's just a set of parts we put together. A building built right operates just like the human body. The envelope of the building is like our thermal envelope. That is the biggest organ in our human body. Because of the efficiency and complexity of that system, our heart and lungs can be really small. What happens with our mechanicals? Because we don't think that way in our buildings, we have to build systems that are twice as the capacity they need to be, because we don't think of the thermal envelope as part of the mechanical electrical system in a building. And why do we have so many buildings? In Charleston, South Carolina, I think, I'm not saying everyone, but almost every major building that's been built since I've been there, and we've been there almost 30 years, that it has a brick veneer, a brick construction. Almost every one of those has had to be rebuilt. Wow. The facades have been with apartment houses, commercial office buildings, federal courthouses, hospitals, condominiums. It's like, really? What happened? And it's and the insurance company will take care of it. Or somebody. So the other thing that has happened, we've externalized all kinds of cost, including the training of our people. We ran a guild tradition up till 1981. We trained all of our artisans except for mechanical trades, and that's not just in the building industry. It's everywhere. Every single industry that used to train its own people are now trying to farm all that out to junior colleges and get technical universities to do the training, and if you're going to move there, they make a deal with the state to give more money to the technical college, so the public sector trains their people. What happened to the history of Ford Motor Company or Boeing or any of these big companies or any that actually literally built the artisans, built the people who made all this equipment and all these great businesses? It's just not part of our culture anymore. And so that's because it's an extraction system and it's all short-term oriented. I know it's a long answer, but...
No, that's great. That's great. Talk a little bit about CityCraft's tied to the Burn School. What brought you here? What do you do here?
I'm still trying to figure that out, but I think that my tie to the Burn School is we started, one of the things that we've been focused on, the reason we're here in Denver, we had determined that the work we do as a master developer and community and city scale operator, and we've always had an NGO and a for-profit side. The way we integrate NGO, public and private sector capital, the way we look at a systems turnaround of cities is pretty unusual. And sustainable, we believe that sustainability and regenerative economies have to be owned and controlled locally to rebuild the control of those economies, as opposed to the extraction of moving all that money out of those areas into a few hands. And so we started down this journey. We looked at 30 cities in the US and Canada, and to look at establish what we called a replication center, so CityCraft moved from being a developer to being teaching and training the whole concept of CityCrafting, and hopefully transferring that to NGOs, public and private sector leaders. And we also had, one of our conditions was to set up an integrated research center. And that's how I originally met Dr. Jackson, because actually we were the first group that we talked to here is the School of Journalism. And working, and this is horrible, I cannot remember right now the name of the chair that we work with all the time. That 72-year-old Rolodex doesn't work so well.
That's okay.
But she was the one who actually encouraged me to meet with Barb. And we set up a meeting, and as Barb tells the story many times, within 20 minutes, she said to me, "Can you teach here?" She just said, you got something, and her book that she wrote when she gave it to me, her first chapter is on master building. And so our mindsets are so similar, but coming from very different, although she's a, design, construction, private sector leader and builder, but she understood, like we understand, that the environment that we're working on, no matter what it is, an industrial plant, whether it's an office building, apartment building, building community, is about a whole set of users and understanding their needs long-term and trying to figure out how that space and how that place is really designed to support their needs and support the adaptability of their needs, whatever it is long-term. And she wouldn't describe it this way, but she knows she's in the human habitat business. And she knows that she's there to be in service to the health of all those that were impacted by what she does. So that's how I originally got connected. Burns, the University of Denver was the second university that joined our Integrated Research Center. The idea with this research center is that we do not have metrics, true metrics for and indicators that are agreed upon by the NGO, public and private sector, that measure and define sustainability or regenerative economics and regenerative communities. And we've believed for a long time that until we get to that understanding where all those sectors can agree on that, we will do nothing but fight about it. And I know it's politically correct to say this, but in the face of all the climate change we're facing, whatever the cause, our inability to deal with facts and truth and not see that these issues are affecting human beings and cultures around the world and in our own country, and not adapt to that because of the change in those issues is a serious problem. And it's like staring something in the face and saying, okay, well, because I don't want to be blamed as a human, I'm just not going to deal with it. Well, I'm sorry, tides rise and winds change, and whatever the cause, you still have to be aware that the human community is impacted by all this. So they became the second school, and the idea was to create an integrated research center with every discipline you can imagine working together, cross-disciplinary and cross-sector, to get at forming a research center that would have a place to work. So the 6,400 urban acre area of West Denver is the equivalent of what the Yale Forest would be for the Yale Forestry School, which has been studied for 125 years. How is it that we have no research center to study human habitat? How is it that we have no learning environment to figure out how natural systems and economic systems and social systems all work? And how do we get to this place? And our basic view is that until we heal the systems our people and buildings are connected to and have those systems balanced with each other, we can do all the green buildings we want individually. We'll never get to this future. We'll never fix the problem. And so, Barb asked me to teach CityCraft, and which is the first time I don't have advanced degrees. I have a lot of advanced experience, but she felt that this methodology and process was really important to expose. It has been, I was telling one of my students today, I just had breakfast with, it's been a joy. I mean, the last 3.5 years, what I have learned about our own work and about, excuse me, how to teach, as I tell the full professors here, I'm just a builder developer, and yet what's been amazing as we work on changing this mindset, getting, we always talk about defining the insanity of the current state, because you can't change anything unless you know the insanity you're part of. And so we spent a lot of time in our course in the early stages of not only giving a history of master building and reading some very diverse set of books that have nothing to do with building development, to get them in a place where, as Barb says, they can start operating out of the unknown, so that they can start seeing how they can start looking at development and real estate from a long-term perspective, not a short-term perspective. And in our work, we've proven, we've been at the forefront of the LEED standards, living building standards ourselves. And we've shown that when you understand a building and a community as a set of systems, and you operate from that standpoint, we advised the school district, when it took us 4 years to get them to change the standard in Charleston, in the work we were doing there, to adopt LEED as a basic building standard. And we advised them on building and designing that it was the first LEED school at all in the entire state of South Carolina. It turned out to be LEED Silver. It was a neighborhood elementary school that was just going to be eliminated in this fairly low-income community. That school was built for $14 a square foot less than what the normal schools that we're building, because of how, if you understand how systems work together, you can cut a lot of costs that is extraneous costs in a building. There's a lot of waste in our building systems and our development systems because we're not trained to think at the system scale.
About the environment, yeah.
It's not just about the environment, it's about how the building itself works. If you put more money into the building of the envelope, you can drive huge amounts of cost reduction in the engineering of the building itself, whether it's mechanical systems or electrical systems, lighting needs in the building, all kinds of things like that. You can do the same thing with landscape. You can really reduce stormwater impacts. There's all kinds of things you can do that eliminate your need for building things that you don't really need if you think that way. And it also then makes the building more durable. You end up cutting the maintenance costs, generally somewhere between 40 and 50% annually. You can increase durability factors, so replacement materials get done a lot less frequently over a 100-year period. And your energy savings can go anywhere from 40 to 70% reduction. So, that's the other problem we have in our business today, is because we don't own our buildings long term, because we're flipping them all the time. The people who actually end up owning them, probably investment groups or insurance companies as well. The incentive is to build shiny buildings that have marble and whatever it is, but there's no incentive really, unless it's a tenant demand like it is on LEED now, to actually really invest in these systems to actually cut the operating costs. Because if we don't own our buildings long term, and we're the ones building it, and we're getting our return, if we put all that money in, but the return only comes in the savings you get every year over 10 or 20 years, then it changes. And so the students what's fascinating is actually see them go through this transition. And I think the thing that I'm just really humbled by is just the energy and the emotion and the just intellectual depth these students are digging at and going after, and just deeply caring about the work and about what they're learning and how it's impacting their lives. And I do feel, I've always been a mentor to young people for a long period of time. I see myself, even as a CEO or leader, as not someone who tells you what to do. It's really, my job is to hire the right resource, create the right environment for success, the right culture, and then let every individual kind of express themselves and use that to grow. But I think our world is about teaching values. And if you get, we have a value system within CityCraft. We have a set of principles and core beliefs. If we teach that, and you have the right people and the right energy, then they will live those values, and they'll bring them to life in a different way than I could ever do myself. And that diversity and I see it in the class. You look at the final projects these students are producing, they blow your mind. They just really, first class, I remember Barb and I were crying. It's just like, what the heck is going on here? It's like this huge, unbelievable, beautiful thing. And the students themselves, there's like a CityCraft alumni group, and they stay connected together. And they connect with me on a continuing basis. I talk to many of the students who even have graduated one-on-one. I've got ones that I'm advising on their business plans. They're trying to set up regenerative businesses. And I'm just there, I'm not there as an expert. I'm not there as the best, as Aristotle says, the man of wisdom is the one who asks the best question, not who has the best answer. And so what I really try and be for them is someone who asks the question, so that helps them actually go through the exploration themselves, because they do have the answer within them. There's just things preventing them from being able to access that answer.
I want to talk a little bit about these students, because as you know, I've interviewed them, and they are transformed by this class. You know, the students I've interviewed say things like, this class changed my life. I mean, they're very passionate about it, and they want to see CityCraft grow and people to know about it and really change the industry. So do you feel like that is just their generation or their curiosity or the kind of time we're in where this is maybe more needed than ever? Or what are your thoughts on that, and kind of what hope does that give you?
Well, particularly in the environment we've been in the last several years, I mean, it just gives me a lot of hope. It's hard for me to answer that question because I come out of this master building tradition. It's what I grew up with. The artisans that I grew up with, that came up with my grandfather, they're the ones who taught me the business. And I'll tell you a short story. There's a guy named Mike Holthouse, who was one of our lead superintendents. I don't even know how old Mike was when I was 20-something. He seemed to be ancient. But he was this little short guy, and he was an amazing artisan and himself, but he ran our major commercial and institutional projects. And I got a call. We were actually renovating one of the private schools and one of their historic buildings, and doing an addition. And I got a call from the president of the school and said, I need you to come over here right away. I said, what's the problem? He said, your superintendent, Mike, is in a fight with one of the contractors and the architect, and just like, it was up on the 3rd floor, and I'm walking upstairs, and all of a sudden, literally, I see him take this 6'4" architect, and he's like 5'8", but he's like strong as an ox. And he not beats hard, but knocks his head, lifts him up and knocks his head against his collar beam. And he said, now do you get it? I said, what is going on here? And I pulled Mike aside, talked to him. He told me what was going on. So I said, you go and just let me and the architect talk about this. And what was going on was Mike was really upset because the way they had designed this stair tower to tie into this part of the building, and you had the collar beams and the roof structure, the way you entered this door was the collar beam was too low, and taller kids or adults would hit their heads. And he said, I'm not building it that way. We've got to change this, and this is what. And he said to me, I'm the architect. I said, I don't care if you're the architect or not. Just look at it. Is he right? Well, kind of, but that's the way it was. That's not the point. The point is, like I didn't say it this way, but we're the human habitat business. And there is not one carpenter, one painter, not one mason, not one who didn't understand that in our work. Not one subcontractor we work with. Every one of them knew they had the right to change anything in any building we were doing if that was the effect, because that's the responsibility we had. So when you ask me this question, it isn't like we don't know how to do this. The current system is only about 40 or 50 years old, including the whole financial system that's more driven us to this methodology as well. So it isn't like we don't know how to do it. We can look at buildings all over Denver, every city, anything that was built pretty much prior to probably 1940, depending upon the area, 1940 is probably a good mark. You can find all the standards of green building. We use reasonably based materials. We built for life. We didn't build 10-year buildings. We built 100-year buildings. We built, the water systems, all the public utilities. They were all in the public arena, but they're beautiful civic art. They weren't Quonset huts and ugly concrete buildings. Schools, incredibly beautiful. Look at East. Look at South. Okay? Now what are we building? And so it's not like we don't know how to do this. And I think the students have seen in their lifetime, in growing up the environments and things they've seen, they're dissatisfied and they're not happy with the sense of community, the sense of respect for themselves and for what goes on. And they think, and I will tell you what, real estate, when I talk about building buildings and making connections and to the systems, the real estate and development industry and the building industry, human habitats are individual homes. Real estate development as a neighborhood are those homes connected in a system. A city is connecting all the larger infrastructure systems. We are the only industry, we are the only profession that has the impact across every one of these systems and every one of these buildings. And if we understand how to do it in the right way, we will fix the world. The business world of real estate and development, we can get ourselves to this future and we can lead every other profession. But if we just keep doing what we're doing, we're not going to do that. And I think what happens is the students are seeing, that's what I want to do. I want to be that way. I want to be that kind of professional and that kind of player in the world. And I'm not doing anything really special other than getting them to see things a little bit differently. And also allowing them to really express who they are and to kind of leave their mark in what they're doing. And I think that's what all of us as parents and adults are supposed to do in society. We're supposed to be growing our children to be better leaders and be better stewards of our world than we were. And it's not an extraction system.
So one final question. I know a lot of this work is ongoing in communities.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an example you can give us where you've seen a community turn around and really be focused on its people and use CityCraft in the way you envision?
Well, we've got any number of examples of our own work. I'll give you a great example that's not in this country, Curitiba, Brazil. It's one of the great marvels. It's being unwound right now because the current leadership is different, but I think it's Jeremy Levin was an architect, and he became the mayor. Mm. And Curitiba had this huge problem with all kinds of trash and waste everywhere and disposal sites, not a good transportation system, all kinds of poverty and everything. And he was a systems thinker. He's now building the revenue system for a transportation system to work. And then he built one of the really great, not rail systems, but what are they called? Bus rapid transit systems with really good headway design. And then for buses, for school or transportation buses, he actually designed it so that he had drivers from almost every neighborhood. And so the bus would be parked in that neighborhood in the evening, and the bus was a library. That's a systems thinker. A systems thinker gets many more uses and many more revenue streams out of the same element. And we do our standard in the Noise Site Master Plan that I teach in the class, the schools as centers of community. How many different uses can the school have to be a really core hub of the community versus just being for the kids and the people who send their kids to public school? Can it be the community library? Can it be the public meeting space? Can it be, and over the years, they used to be that way. And the gymnasiums and all were the community sport complex, but over time, all the legal insurance issues, well, you can't have that in there unless you have somebody from the school super. So now the kids didn't have a place to play. And then one after the other, we got rid of all these uses in our public schools, which used to be the hub of the community. And then the only people who cared about it were the people who sent people to their public school. And maybe 50% of them didn't even really get involved. Well, when you eliminate all those carings from all those different sectors, you eliminate people wanting to invest in public schools. Is that helpful?
Yes, absolutely. John, it's been wonderful to visit with you. Thank you for sharing CityCraft with us and with the Burns School. It's really appreciated. And we thank you all for joining us for the Burns interview series.
Thank you.